It's India's missile convorsum. Never before flurry of missile tests. From the nuclear-capable Shaurya to the radar hunter-killer Rudram. The Ladakh standoff has literally lit a fire. And there is no time for rest. India's missile program is on fire. That's our top focus on India First. It's a momentous occasion today. India's integrated missile development program started in 1983. Agni, Prithvi, Akash, Nag and Trishul. So it's only now in 2020 that the Nag anti-tank guided missile test has been successful and the Nag missile is ready for induction. This is a tank hunter killer missile. It's a major day. We'll tell you more about a series of missile tests that have been taking place in the last 1.5 months. 12 tests and counting, because there are more to follow. What's the signal to India's adversaries? All that and much more. But watch the images we are about to show you. See the missile go soar in the sky and then come down, and a top-down hit, a successful hit on the tank. That is the Nag anti-tank guided missile. That's not the only missile we'll be talking about today, but this is a momentous occasion for India. India now has our own anti-tank missile. It's a hunter-killer missile. There's much more that I'll tell you about our missiles, but Shiv Arur with our top story tonight.
An incredible piece of footage from the hallowed turf of Pokhran. What you're looking at is the Nag, India's very own anti-tank guided missile, blasting out from its carrier, soaring high into the sky and screaming down to destroy a target tank. Nag, anti-tank guided missile, 4.7 kilometer range, target tanks, armored vehicles. Status ready for induction. The Nag has taken a long time to prove itself. But with this test, the missile has completed its final trial with the Indian Army and is now declared fit for induction and operational service. The final trial by fire you see here was no ordinary one. While it was fired here at a small range, the missile can destroy targets out to 7 kilometers. The missile was integrated with the actual warhead and a tank target was kept at designated range. Fired at sunrise, the missile accurately locked and destroyed the target tank. The Nag missile has fire and forget and top attack capabilities to defeat all modern battle tanks equipped with composite and reactive armor. With this final user trial, Nag will enter into production phase. The missile will be produced by Defence PSU Bharat Dynamics Limited, whereas Ordnance Factory Medak will produce the Nag missile carrier you see firing the weapon. The Nag's carrier, the BMP-2, is already deployed in large numbers in Ladakh and at high altitudes, which means the Nag will, in the coming months, see possible deployment in area where India and China have deployed large numbers of armored vehicles during the current standoff. Nag carriers deployed in strength could be formidable tank killers in such a scenario. The final trials will hopefully bring to a close the long, difficult development and testing journey of one of India's most awaited missiles. Bureau Report, India Today.
And that's where this becomes extremely interesting. India's not on the defensive. When you have the Nag missile on a BMP-2 infantry combat vehicle, you're also talking about an offensive role. Let me quickly cut across to India Today's Shiv Arur for the latest on the story. Shiv, India and China deployed at the line of actual control. Tension and friction remains high. And in this situation, a series of missile tests. But first, let's focus on Nag. Will Nag be deployed at the LAC, Shiv?
Well, Gaurav, the Nag test, couldn't have come sooner. This is a missile that's been in development for decades together. It started in the 80s, and it's only, completing its development trials now. This was the final user trial. So even though it's taken a very long time, it's turned out to be an extremely capable missile. And as the video captures, it was a bang-on target test in the Pokhran firing ranges, which you and I have both reported from. The Nag is a tank killer. It's an anti-tank guided missile. It's fired from a BMP carrier called the Namika, which is Nag missile carrier. And this is a vehicle that's already been deployed. The base vehicle has been deployed in many areas. So theoretically, this is an anti-tank weapon that could be deployed in all sorts of theaters, including possibly Ladakh, as and when the Indian Army chooses to. The Nag itself has faced a lot of difficulties in development. The Army has tried to fine-tune it, and finally it has managed to spin off this very, very capable weapon that's capable of defeating tanks at distances of between 4 and 7 kilometers. The delay in the Nag has forced the Indian Army to look outside the country for anti-tank weaponry. But with this weapon finally becoming available and becoming operationally ready, it's a huge step for self-reliance in defense.
What's extremely crucial, Shiv, as you very rightly point out, that this is where we are becoming Atmanirbhar in our missile technology, and that's very crucial given the two adversaries on either border, China and Pakistan. In a moment, we'll also be joined by Sandeep Unnithan, Executive Editor, India Today magazine. But before I can bring in Sandeep, I also want to talk about the anti-radiation missile Rudram, test fired recently off a Su-30 MKI. Why is this an absolute game changer? The Rudram detects enemies' radars and communication centers. Even if they switch it off once detected, this missile will home onto the target and destroy it. It then creates a gap in enemies' defenses for our fighter jets to go in and take out vital assets and vital points deep inside enemy territory. Take a look at India's missile Shakti.
It's been fired before, but this was the first time it was publicized. This is the Rudram, India's brand new anti-radiation missile. Seen here launched from a Sukhoi MKI fighter high up over the Bay of Bengal. But what does an anti-radiation missile do? An anti-radiation missile is a weapon designed to detect and home in on an enemy radio emission source, mainly radars that make up the heart of enemy air defenses. Take, for instance, Chinese radars and communication centers in the depth areas across the line of actual control from eastern Ladakh, up to 200 kilometers inside. Indian jets sporting such a missile would be capable of destroying those radar sites with such a weapon. The radar waves would literally draw the missile into the target. The missile's seeker can detect, classify and engage targets over a wide band of frequencies. The missile is a potent weapon for Indian Air Force pilots in the difficult suppression of enemy air defenses from large standoff ranges. With this, the country has established indigenous capability to develop long-range air-launched anti-radiation missiles for neutralizing enemy radars, communication sites, and other radio frequency emitting targets.
We need to do some more tests on that, and then once that is done, it will be inducted into the Indian Air Force, maybe in the next about 1 year or so.
The Rudram will see more tests before it is operationally cleared for services. Bureau Report, India Today.
India Today's finest team of defense reporters now join me on the broadcast. Shiv Arur stays with me. Sandeep Unnithan, Executive Editor, India Today magazine, joins me on the show. Sandeep, were all parameters met when Rudram was fired off a Su-30 MKI? What does this mean for the enemy's air defenses, and how soon before Rudram sees action and deployment?
Well, Gaurav, Rudram is a very significant addition to the Indian Air Force's arsenal when it's inducted into service. And one of the very vital roles that this performs is suppression of enemy air defenses, which, as you know, is when Air Force aircraft have to fly in and neutralize air defense radars and missile batteries so that, a bombing raid can follow. And this is something that could be used hypothetically in a situation like a Balakot raid. If Air Force aircraft are tasked to go in, you can fire these missiles and neutralize radar sites. And that is one of the very crucial roles that this missile is going to perform. And it's also the building block for a whole new series of missiles based on the technology that's been perfected in this Rudram. There will be future installments of this missile which will be
If I may pose a hypothetical question, Sandeep, can the Rudram neutralize an S-400 missile shield of the adversary?
Well, certainly, Gaurav, it will have to be with some tweaks to the missile. I mean, it's, these missiles have to be tuned to the frequencies, particular frequencies of the emitting radars. And without a doubt, the Air Force will be looking at taking out large missiles sites like the S-400, which fielded by the adversary. So potentially any radar emission, any radar site, any surface-to-air missile radar can be knocked out by these Rudram missiles. Gaurav.
Fair enough. Stay with me, Sandeep. Let's now talk about missiles that travel perhaps twice the speed of sound, 2.8 times the speed of sound, and the hypersonic technology demonstrator vehicle that can go up to 6 times the speed of sound. The adversary will have nothing to counter this, and that is what India is experimenting with. But before that, let's talk about the supersonic cruise missile BrahMos, fired off a Su-30 MKI, fired from land, extended range, and also fired from a ship. India very clearly sending out a message: we are no pushovers and we will not bend.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now.
The unmistakable roar of the BrahMos. Screaming into the air, this supersonic cruise missile is the fastest weapon in India and one of the fastest in the world. But this unpublicized test from September 30th, a video of which you're seeing for the first time here on India Today, wasn't just another test of the BrahMos missile. You cannot tell from these dramatic pictures, but the weapon being tested here is a beefed-up BrahMos. While the BrahMos has for long been restricted to a 290-kilometer range, this test last week saw the BrahMos being tested at ranges well in excess of 400 kilometers. Also invisible to the eye are a slew of improvements that make this weapon significantly more stealthy. With this range extension, several more targets come within range of the BrahMos missile, including several air bases, military establishments, and Chinese army depots in Tibet. The speed and stealth of the BrahMos also ensures very little reaction time to its targets. The BrahMos, in simple terms, is now a threat to many more Chinese targets than earlier. BrahMos missile regiments are already deployed in Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh at this time. With the range extension updates to the missile, they get longer legs. Theoretically, every BrahMos in service can now sport an extended range, including the BrahMos on Indian Navy warships. The air-launched BrahMos from the Indian Air Force's Sukhoi 30 MKF fighters, and most immediately, the Army's large number of BrahMos regiments. The hugely significant extended range BrahMos has been tested up to 400 kilometers, but will ultimately be pushed to over 800 kilometers, making it the most fearsome strike weapon in the Indian arsenal. You can be sure that China has taken note. With Shivarur in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
I quickly want to shift focus and take you down history. Remember, on 15th August 1947, India became independent. In just about 2 months, Pakistan invaded Jammu and Kashmir and tried to take Kashmir by force, and that happened on this day, 22nd of October in 1947, when Pakistani tribals and raiders came into Uri and Baramulla. They raped, they plundered. There was mayhem for 3 days in that area. It was only on the 27th of October that the Indian Army landed at Srinagar and inch by inch, kilometer by kilometer, recovered Jammu and Kashmir. Today, people in Jammu and Kashmir are observing Black Day because this was the day that we were invaded by Pakistan.
The horrors unleashed by Pakistan in 1947. Just 2 months after partition, thousands of Pak Army regulars and tribal Islamist militia invaded Jammu and Kashmir, unleashing murders, rapes, loot and arson. Those horrifying memories are still fresh after 73 years for the survivors. Gurudev Singh, then a 5-year-old, still shudders, remembering the nightmare for his family.
हम खाना खाने बैठे थे तो तभी शोर पड़ गया, भागो 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 भागो। वो खाना जो था हमारा वो थाली में पड़ा ही रहा और हम फटोफट वहाँ से हमें छोटे बच्चों को उठाया और जो माल मवेशी थे उनके गले में जो रस्सा था वो निकाल दिया ताकि ये लोग भूखे मर जाएंगे, बांधे हुए हैं, उनको खुला छोड़ दिया। तो वहाँ से निकले सीधा आगे जो बाग तहसील था, जो बाजार था, टाउन था, वहाँ पे लोग, वहाँ पर हज़ारों जमा हो गए, मुजफ्फराबाद के लोग आ गए। मेरी फैमिली पर सुरक्षित आई, सिवाय मेरी छोटी बहन के, जिसको मैंने बताया कि गोली लगी थी वहाँ पे।
Many Hindu and Sikh families fought the murderous Pak intruders with bare hands of whatever rudimentary weapon they had. Thousands perished, thousands of others had to flee to escape the ethnic cleansing by Pakistan Army, which still occupies their land as POK.
कि 47 में हमारा कम से कम 40,000 हिंदू सिख औरतें बच्चे जो थे वो इस सारे उसमें मारे गए। उनके कोई अपने जो लीडर थे शायद उनकी दूरंदेशी इतनी नहीं थी या वो धोखे में आ गए। उन्होंने कहा ये ठीक कहते हैं, हम लड़ेंगे नहीं, अपने हथियार जमा करा दिए। जब जमा करा दिए फिर क्या कि 5-6 हज़ार का पूरा इकट्ठ था, उसमें जितनी यंग लेडीज थी उनको उठाना शुरू कर दिया, पकड़ना शुरू कर दिया। जब पकड़ना शुरू किया उन्होंने तो चीख चहाड़ा मच गया, औरतें कर रही। साथ में दरिया था, ये जो किशन गंगा पूरी दरिया ये गुजरता है वहाँ से, इसमें छलांगे लगाई औरतों ने, हैं। तो उस वक्त वो भगदड़ जब मची तो उन्होंने फिर फायर खोल दिया।
वो जो हार्ड टाइम था वो माइंड में आता है सबके सामने। जिंदगी में काफ़ी सी उनको डिफ़िकल्टीज भी आई, एज वेल एज फिजिकली, फाइनेंशियली, क्योंकि पीछे सब कुछ छोड़ के आए थे। तो काफ़ी स्ट्रगल के बाद उनको ये थोड़ी सी मतलब मेंटली सुकून मिला।
In Baramulla, the mercenaries didn't spare even hospitals and many nurses were raped and murdered.
That time itself the militancy started, I would say, because at that time we were not even knowing what is all about, and we were all, I mean, people must be innocent people, right. And that time itself they were having vengeance in them, and coming here and attacking the hospital means that is something beyond anyone's understanding.
The Modi government has created a special drive to highlight the plight of forgotten people, marking October 22nd as a Black Day for Jammu and Kashmir. A museum will soon come up in Delhi to highlight Pakistan's role in invasion and their barbarism.
Definitely, it was a long due recognition, to these heroes, and I think a government that stands for its people, whether the people exist now or they existed in the past, is the government which actually is for the nation, and I think it's a very wonderful initiative by the government of India.
73 years may have passed since Jammu and Kashmir was invaded by Pakistani tribals and Pakistani army. But the wounds of the displaced communities from Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir are still fresh. Their main grievance is that their story doesn't feature in the larger narrative of Jammu and Kashmir.
With Kamaljeet Sandhu, Sunilji Bhatt and Shweta Singh, Bureau Report, India Today.
Pakistan continues to spread terror in Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan was defeated in 1947, 1965, 1971, 1999, even in this war on terror, and of course the Balakot bombing. But before I go, I want to leave you with these images. Two Kashmiri boys, misguided, took to the gun. They joined the Al-Badr terrorist organization. The Indian army gave them a chance to surrender. Their families were desperate that the boys surrender, and they did. Take a look at these happy faces, looking forward to a prosperous Jammu and Kashmir.
मैं आपको सीलू में मिला था 1 अक्टूबर को, और उस टाइम मैंने आपसे वादा किया था कि हमारी कोशिश रहेगी कि आपके बच्चों को सही सलामत वापस लाया जाए। तो आज हम उसमें कामयाब हुए। अभी आप